sure Jack's not our only veteran here, but we do appreciate his service. Okay. Our Old Testament reading is a bookend between a story we all know at least somewhat well. It's a story that people cite just by one word, Sodom. And this is what happens around that story. The Lord appeared to Abraham by the oaks of Mamre as he sat at the entrance of his tent in the heat of day. He looked up, and he saw 3 men standing near him. When he saw them, he ran from the tent entrance to meet them and bowed down to the ground. He said, "My Lord, if I find favor with you, do not pass by your servant. Let a little water be brought and wash your feet, and rest yourselves under the tree. Come, let me bring a little bread, that you may refresh yourselves, and after that you may pass on. What since you have come to your servant?" So they said, "Do as you have said." And Abraham hastened into the tent to Sarah and said to her, "Make ready quickly 3 measures of choice flour, knead it, and make cakes." Abraham ran to the herd and took a calf, tender and good, and gave it to his servant, who hastened to prepare it. Then he took curds and milk and the calf that he had prepared and set it before them. He stood by them under the tree while they ate. They said to him, "Where is your wife Sarah?" And he said, "There in my tent." Then one said, "I will surely return to you in due season, and your wife Sarah shall have a son." And Sarah was listening in the tent entrance behind him. And now Abraham and Sarah were old. And after Sarah heard this, she laughed to herself, saying, "After I have grown old and my husband is old, shall I have pleasure?" The Lord said to Abraham, "Why did Sarah laugh and say, 'Shall I indeed bear a child now that I am old?' Is anything too wonderful for the Lord? At the set time I will return to you in due season, and Sarah shall have a son." But Sarah denied it, saying, "I did not laugh, for she was afraid." But he said, "Oh, yes, you did laugh." The Lord dealt with Sarah as he had said, and the Lord did for Sarah as he had promised. Sarah conceived and bore Abraham a son in his old age. At the time of which God had spoken to him, Abraham gave the son's name Isaac, which means "he who laughs." And to his son whom Sarah bore him. And Abraham circumcised his son Isaac when he was 8 days old, as God had commanded him. Abraham was 100 years old when his son Isaac was born to him. Now as Sarah said, "God has brought laughter for me. Everyone who hears will laugh with me." And she said, "Who would have ever said to Abraham that Sarah would nurse children? Yet I have borne him a son in my old age." Now from the New Testament, we have a story that brings a lot of detail to it, in spite of the fact that almost nobody does anything directly in the story. It's what comes after the story that counts. Then Jesus went about all the cities and villages, teaching in their synagogues, and proclaiming the good news of the kingdom, and curing every disease and every illness. When he saw the crowds, he had compassion for them, because they were harassed and helpless, like sheep without a shepherd. Then he said to his disciples, "The harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. Therefore ask the Lord of the harvest to send out laborers into his harvest." Then Jesus summoned his disciples and gave them authority over unclean spirits to cast them out and to cure every disease and every sickness. These are the names of the 12 apostles: Simon, also known as Peter, and his brother Andrew; James, son of Zebedee, and his brother John; Philip and Bartholomew; Thomas and Matthew the tax collector; James, son of Alphaeus and Thaddeus; Simon the Cananaean; and Judas Iscariot, the one who betrayed him. The 12 Jesus sent out with the following instructions: "Go nowhere among the Gentiles, and enter into the town of the Samaritans, but go rather to the lost sheep of Israel. As you go, proclaim the good news. The kingdom of heaven has come near. Cure the sick, raise the dead, cleanse the lepers, cast out demons. You received without payment, give without payment. Take no gold or silver or copper in your belts, no bag for your journey, or 2 tunics or sandals for a staff, for laborers deserve their payment. Whatever town or village you enter, find out who in it is worthy, and stay there until you leave. As you enter the house, greet it. If the house is worthy, let your peace come upon it. But if it is not worthy, let your peace return to you. If anyone will not welcome you or listen to your words, shake off the dust from your feet as you leave that house or town. Truly I will tell you, it will be more tolerable to the land of Sodom and Gomorrah on the day of judgment than it was for them. See, I am sending you out like sheep into the midst of wolves. So be wise as serpents and innocent as doves. Beware of them, for they will hand you over to the councils and flog you in the synagogues, and you will all be dragged before governors and kings of Israel because of me, as a testimony to them and the Gentiles. When they hand you over, do not worry about how you are to speak or what you are to say, for it is not you that speaks, but the Spirit of your Father speaking through you. Brother will betray brother to death, and the father his child, and children will rise up against parents and have them put to death. And you will be hated by all because of my name. But the one who endures to the end will be saved. When they persecute you in one town, flee to the next. For truly I tell you, you will not have gone through the whole towns of Israel before the Son of Man comes. This is the Word of God. I'm going to have trouble locking in behind a pulpit for a few months. This is not natural to me. I want to go out among the people, and I have trained myself for years to do that. And I don't think I stood behind a pulpit since high school, my debate days. Jesus is sending the disciples out among the people. And when I was growing up, that was what you were expected to do. That was part of the tradition that I grew up in. Is that the story that's happening here in Matthew? You have to find everybody who is lost, and that's the phrase we usually use, and convince them to be precisely like us, or they're doomed. They're going to hell. It's an interesting thought, especially when it's connected so closely to the story of Sodom and Gomorrah. But as I look at the details, I think there's something more that's happening here. The issues divide people. Might not be the center of the story. The issues that divide people might in fact be inconsequential. Jesus looks out at the fields, very clearly talking about people. In fact, very clearly talking about one nation, Israel. And he's talking to this group of 12 Israelites, or more precisely 12 Judeans, or Galileans. And he looks out at the people and he says, the harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. The fields are ripe with harvest. The wheat is ready to be gathered in. All these people who want to hear the good news. More people than you can possibly bring in. Tons of people, great crowds of people, feeling harassed, feeling persecuted. And he's sending out just 12 disciples. Just 12 of them. We can read off their names one after another. These people are desperate to hear the good news. And we worry, at least I worry, that some of the people didn't think exactly like me. Some of the people were not exactly like me. And Jesus was saying, if they accept you, be happy for them. Make peace with them. But if they don't, move on down the road, because there's a lot more people out there who want to hear what you have to say to them. We don't have to be pugnacious about it. We don't have to push things exactly our way all the time. That's a hard thing for us to accept. It doesn't matter if you're a liberal Christian or a conservative Christian. I have an in-law who's Muslim. His brother is an atheist. And one day I was listening to the two of them argue. And he was trying to convert his brother to be more active in faith. And I was sitting there laughing at them because I was saying, you know, you sounded exactly like me in my teenage years. And this Muslim is actually technically my stepson. Did not appreciate that. He did not think that was the right thing to do, because he found his faith to be very powerful. And he couldn't figure out why his brother wasn't agreeing with him. I find my faith now to be very powerful, filled with good news and joy. We should find that. We should find our faith to be powerful and healing, that brings peace and reconciliation to the people around us. Dangerous sometimes when we find out that other people don't always agree with us. And we find out that there's concerns that other people might not think about. I am convinced when we talk about the nuns now, you've heard me talk about them frequently, because it's just an interesting phenomenon. Since 1993, more and more young people have been moving away from faith altogether. They call themselves the nuns. At least sociologists are calling them that, because they don't claim any particular faith. I think they are claiming a faith. I think they've heard so many pugnacious Christians. They have heard so many pugnacious Christians saying, you either think exactly like I do, you either act exactly like I do, you do things exactly like my church does it, or there's no place for you. You do not belong in the kingdom of heaven. They've been harassed and persecuted by the church itself. And so they claim this title nun, and they say, either you accept me as I am, or I got nothing to do with you. Have we gone out into their midst and proclaimed good news? Have we gone out into their midst and said, I have found joy, something to laugh about, something thrilling? Or have we gone out and said, you're doomed? Part of it is whether or not we have learned the art of hospitality. We have learned to listen. What is affecting other people? Have we been changed by that? Psalm 116, which we started with this morning, says that I pay my vows before all the people. But the sense is that when we pray, it ought to change you. There's not a day I don't pray for my adopted sons. Now, my one adopted son works in a bar. He's a dishwasher. He comes home at 2 o'clock in the morning every night. A Native American boy, and I still think of him as a boy. I know he's an adult now. But driving home at 2 o'clock in the morning, I'm scared for him. It changes my attitude about what's happening right now. I think like a father. And so sometimes I let that fear speak for me. I think some of you last week heard that fear and didn't understand where that fear was coming from. And I apologize for that. But I also want you to think about where other people are speaking from. It's the hospitality. You see, we say we recognize when God will come to us. And we look at the Bible and we have these literal epiphanies. And we say, I will recognize God if He comes into my midst. Yet, in today's Old Testament passage, Abraham, the friend of God, did not recognize God when he saw it. Sarah, his wife, did not recognize these men as God and his angels. What Abraham did is what you would have done for anybody else. Would have done for you and I. He saw somebody come to his camp who was traveling the Middle East on foot. And he reached out to them and he welcomed them into his house. And he proved that he was worthy. It was not about the fact that God came to him. It was about the truth that he was willing to serve other people. And he bowed down and he fed them. He didn't ask who they were first. He fed them. And it wasn't until after the fellowship that God bestowed the blessing. Then God said, "Where is your wife, Sarah?" She was exactly where she was supposed to be, according to Middle Eastern custom. She was effectively in the kitchen. She shouldn't be sitting with men talking. That would have been offensive. But she's kind of listening the way you do from the kitchen. What's the conversation at the Thanksgiving table? And God says, "You're going to have a son." Now, Sarah's 90 years old. But you're 90 yet? I know there's one. Most of us aren't. How many think they want to have a baby now? Now, even you who are younger than 90 years old want to have a baby. She's 90 years old. She's laughing. It's like, "You're nuts. Who is this crazy guy?" But she's already served him. She has already proved herself worthy. And in that proof, in that joy, in that serving one another, she is given the blessing. And in contrast to that, we find Sodom and Gomorrah. Sodom and Gomorrah, who does not recognize the poor, does not recognize the stranger, who exploits them. That's from Ezekiel. Got nothing to do with sex. And in Sodom and Gomorrah, they attacked these three men, or two by then. God had stayed behind. But Sarah, at the end of the story, at this bookend to the story about inhospitality and hospitality, she is given laughter. Literally a child named Laughter. So are we. We can get caught up about who's not in church. But can we get caught up in laughter? Can we get caught up in the idea that we have something wonderful and we're going to share it to everybody else, whether they take it in or not? We're going to share it to everybody else and let them share in our laughter. And some will laugh with us, and some will not. That's just the facts of life. But when we laugh with other people, we will discover that some people will laugh with us because there's a lot of people who want laughter in their lives. There's a lot of people who want to know joy. They're just waiting for us to share it with them. Amen. laughing Christ, we get too caught up in our own fears, our own beliefs, our own ends. Comfort our fears, teach us what we need to know, and take away our ends, so that we may know what brings laughter to our hearts. Amen. And you shall be blessed by laughter in your old age. Amen.